Well, you just met them in their incredibly exuberant garden, and now they're joining us in the studios to celebrate the release of their new book, Scott Ogden and Lauren Springer Ogden. It's a pleasure to have you on the set here at Central Texas Gardener, and congratulations. It's an exquisite book to look at, first off. And I think it's going to be a very challenging book for a lot of folks out there as well. It will certainly get them thinking about their gardens in a completely new way. And I know that was the intent. You're very passionate about what you do.
We both are, and we felt, when we were going to do it, we don't do too many books. When we're going to do it, we want to, kind of do something serious about it and significant. And so this one, we had some stuff on our chest we needed to get off. Basically, that we felt like gardens, as they've become popularized in kind of popular culture, are drifting away from their roots, and their roots are about a relationship with plants.
Okay. Well, you in the videotape piece, you talk about having this love relationship with plants, which is the starting place for you both. I mean, I know that you are both consummate plants people, but there's, beyond that love relationship that you talk about in the piece, there's this frustration that you have with the way the gardens now are created, Lauren, and you really, it's like a kind of a, I don't know, is it a cookie cutter approach that you object to, or is it, what is it that frustrates you about kind of the state of gardens in our country right now?
Well, cookie cutter for sure, but I think it's more that the whole instant garden thing, that you can do a garden like you do your living room, and it's done.
Yeah.
And also that really, for us, and we are more intense about it than a lot of people. We don't expect everybody to delve into it in a professional level or an obsessive level, but to have a garden means also to be involved with the living things that are in your garden, and that's the joy. And that's what's missing.
And it's particularly missing from the world of design. So most of the people who entitle themselves to talk about design when it comes to gardens are kind of hands-off afterwards. They miss the whole idea that this is a relationship that you're involved in over a period of time.
So really this is about connection for you guys in a very profound kind of way. Connection with not just the individual plants, but plant communities and the interaction of all these things, how they work together.
It is, and it's about creating beautiful spaces with the plants as the starting point for that. So that when you actually lay things out, you already have in mind where these plants will be able to do their best. You can help modify those spaces to make that happen. It's something that's left out of so much of the common landscape architecture that's you see all around, either whether it's for a public space or private gardens, very often leaves out those special places that really will show off a plant to its best.
I know a lot of gardeners out there who are really passionate. I read a lot of garden blogs now, and there are people who rant about what they call magazine perfect gardens. And I know that you have a bone to pick with one of the leading garden design magazines here in the country for that very same kind of reason, I think.
Yeah, well, I look at some of the magazines and I look at these very beautiful images, but they aren't gardens. The plants are relegated to totally subordinate positions, and the pictures are beautiful, but there isn't anything that you feel about that particular creation, that there's going to be change over time, that it looks different at different seasons, that there's going to have to be made some decisions about how a plant grows and how it needs to be trained that'll completely change how the place looks. None of that is apparent. They're outdoor spaces. And they're not gardens. And you were talking about connection, Tom. Connection is different for every person who loves plants. It could be because you like to be outside. It could be because you want to be with plants and animals. It could be that you just want to create something beautiful with living plants. But it's all about how you relate to those plants and how they bring you into that kind of a place.
So lead with the plants, do what's right by them, and kind of follow your heart. is what I'm hearing. Is kind of the guiding principles.
That would be there, and really also then be prepared for change. Be prepared to rethink things down the road. It's not going to, anyone who can claim to design a garden perfectly, but it's not like that. A garden grows and changes inherently, and it has to be rethought and revisited.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing I think all gardeners, no matter how rigid we might want to start off, you have to bend with the will of the soil, the plants, the drought, whatever.
And sometimes those relationships don't work. You don't really like that plant as much as you thought you were going to like it.
Right.
And so it's time to go off to the compost pile and start again. So that's
not being afraid to do that is a big thing for a lot of gardeners.
It is. I mean, that's the problem with the whole model of it as a home improvement project. Where you do it right the first time and you walk away from it. It's not that.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I know that when I first heard about your approach, and I see the gardens that you've designed, and they're so beautiful. I mean, they're luxurious. They're filled with life and color and variety and pattern and texture, and all those things are there, present. My first thought was, what inspired this originally? It's like. I'm always trying to think of how would I do that, and one of the first things that came to my mind was, should I go out and look at plant communities in nature? But you also are not necessarily against the use of native plants, but against kind of the orthodoxy that's grown up around the use of native plants.
Yeah, we don't like to rote repeat, but we have a lot of time spent in the book talking about going to nature for inspiration, and that's where both of us come to gardening really from. We're not trained, Lauren has a basic horticulture background trained. I'm from geology, but both of us were attracted to gardens really just from the beauty of nature. That's how we came to it, as opposed to from art or architecture.
Right. So many of the gardeners that I know, whether they're doing whatever kind of garden they have, they're very passionate about it, and they feel it's their creative outlet. What is your role as the artist in your garden? You're advocating a really different way of thinking about it. You're still creators. You're still assembling these different things. What is your artistic input in the garden?
Well, we actually talk about this in the book. I think, a lot of people will say that gardening isn't even an art, but I'm not even going to go there because you could argue that ad nauseum, because who knows what art is really. But it's a lot like cooking, because you aren't always in control, but you can make yourself believe you're in control when you need that for your ego boost, and then it gets flattened, and then you get over it, and so it's a dance between kind of the chaos of the natural world and your hand. And if you get comfortable with that, it's one of the most fun things you could possibly do, because you're never ever 100% in charge, and you can relieve yourself of that.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of the
letting go seems to be a big part of what your philosophy is all about.
Very much.
A lot of the design part comes into trying a bunch of things and seeing the ones that work and the ones that don't, and making decisions, based on that, and you get more of the plants that really like you and like your space, and use them in groupings that will effectively recall maybe a beautiful meadow scene or a woodland understory that you experienced in nature, something like that. So,
or not even in nature, just a feeling of abundance. It doesn't have to be naturally put together. It can be. Some people, that's not their thing.
Right.
So.
And we also go back to nature, just for general inspiration. Every region has, things about it that, have certain challenges and certain offerings. Here in Central Texas, we have a tremendously hot, long summer that's hard to deal with, and you have to plan around that. But we also have very often a tremendous kind of wildflower abundance in the spring.
Right.
And you can plan to have something recalling that as well.
Right. One of the things I want to let the viewers know too is that there's a lot of good just hands-on information in the book. There are lots of good plant lists where you suggest plants for particular kinds of spaces in the garden. So there is a strong philosophical bent to the book. Of course, it is gorgeously illustrated, but lots of good practical information that they can take if they really want to dive in to this plant first philosophy. You give them a lot of tools to do that.
We did that, and we also, at the end of the book, there's a whole chapter that really profiles gardens that we think are plant-driven, all around the country. I mean, from Zone 4 to Zone 11, and even in Europe and in South Africa. So there's, a lot of different ideas to bounce off all through the book.
The whole underscoring all of this, though, and we just have a very brief amount of time. It all comes back around to the sense of connection, and as we all understand what the loss of that connection has meant for our relationship with the whole planet, then we know that this really is a way that we can come back around to something that's really important.
That's what gardens are for.
All right. Well, folks, I'm so happy that you are here on Central Texas Gardener. Congratulations on the beautiful new book, one that I know that our audience out there will love reading. Scott, first off, the writing is always so great from you guys, but a beautiful book, one that will challenge you and inspire you. Thanks very much, Scott and Lauren, for being here.